What does it mean that Jayden Daniels is the starting quarterback on the first Washington Commanders unofficial depth chart? For starters, it means the best man won the job, but it also means you can actually believe what this coaching staff is telling you. That and more coming up on today's episode of Locked On Commanders.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Commanders fans? Welcome into this episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, David Harrison, credentialed member of the media, covering the Washington Commanders for Sports Illustrated's CommanderGameDay.com. And I'm here with you every Monday through Friday. Greatly appreciate you coming through for today's episode, especially if you're a new viewer. Got a lot of new viewers with training camp going on. Welcome to the show. Hope you like what you see and or hear, and you come back often, especially as our everydayers do. Everydayers, greatly appreciate you coming through every single day. This is your daily podcast covering the Washington Commanders. And if you haven't already, you can subscribe for free on YouTube or wherever you are listening to today's episode, or subscribe on both. Turn on the auto downloads, and whether you need to listen to it, watch it, a little bit of both, you can have it no matter where you are, no matter what app you're on. On today's episode, we're going to hear from Logan Paulsen, his thoughts from training camp so far, Jayden Daniels, and a bunch of other things coming up. But first, we are going to talk about the Washington Commanders' first unofficial depth chart coming out Tuesday morning, just as practice was getting started. But of course, Dan Quinn, ahead of practice, letting us know that Jayden Daniels was the number one quarterback on, or is the number one quarterback on that depth chart, and will start against the New York Jets on Saturday. If you want to discuss that or anything else on this episode, or anything really Washington Commanders related, all you got to do is send me a text message, and you can do that by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders. Do that. From there, you can send me your messages, your questions. I'm going to send you answers. I'm going to send you updates, information, bonus content, exclusive access to things like insider Zoom conferences, which we've been doing more of here during this training camp session. And the best part is you don't have to download any apps. There's no hashtags or filters you got to worry about. It's all Commanders content all the time. Join subtext.com/LockedOnCommanders to get in on that. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs, which helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Terms and conditions do apply. Tuesday morning, just before practice got started, we found out that quarterback Jayden Daniels is quarterback number one on the first unofficial depth chart for the Washington Commanders and will start against the New York Jets. Now, our last episode before this one, we went ahead, kind of went through a depth chart projection, and I kind of stated on there that based on the history of this coaching staff, the decisions they had made with how they were going to roll Jayden Daniels into this organization, into the program, Dan Quinn talking a lot about how, it's not a secret that Jayden Daniels obviously is intended to be and will be one day the full-fledged starting quarterback of the Washington Commanders, but there's a process to it. And that process has involved rolling people out a little bit slowly, but also just kind of taking things up one step at a time. So I kind of figured, given that history, you might see Jayden Daniels be the second quarterback on the opening depth chart. You might not see him start against the New York Jets. They may decide, hey, your first NFL action, we're going to let you come in mid-game, kind of see the flow of the game before you actually get into it, all those things. Instead, there's another part of this conversation that Dan Quinn and his coaching staff have been talking about, and that is the competition. And not just the spirit of competition, but the effect that the best player for the job was going to be on the field. We've heard defensive coordinator Joe Witt Jr. talk about not just having 11 starters, but having multiple people that are going to fill specific roles and do certain things. And the offense certainly is kind of the same way. And the coaching staff, with this decision, with this depth chart, kind of holding true to that conversation, showing you, because Jayden Daniels, by every account of everybody who's been out here for training camp watching these guys practice, Jayden Daniels has been clear and away, or far and away, the best quarterback on the field. So certainly this coaching staff living up to their word, showing the players on this roster that if you go out there and you earn that job, you're going to get the job. And that's exactly what happened with the unveiling of the first depth chart here of the preseason. But let's look at the rest of the depth chart as well and see there were some areas where maybe a little bit of surprises, maybe a little bit of things that you weren't expecting to see. And sticking on the offensive side of things, left tackle Brandon Coleman, he is the left tackle number one on the depth chart. Now, he didn't practice on Tuesday. Not fully sure of the extent of why he was held out of practice. So we'll have to see how that kind of develops into Thursday with the joint practice against the New York Jets, and then even further into the game on Saturday. Nick Allegretti's your left guard. Tyler Biadasz, your center. Right guard is obviously going to be Sam Cosmi. And right tackle Andrew Wiley is the starting right tackle on this first unofficial depth chart. Andrew Wiley is someone who has been out of practice again, not completely out of practice, but out of team drills, things like that, really only doing the individual work. It was the same case on Tuesday. So again, we'll have to see if he's a full go for the joint practice, or if he has to be held out again to ensure that his health is kind of paramount there. And then we'll see what happens for the game as well. At practice, in fact, you actually had 3 of those starting linemen not in the formation. Tyler Biotish and Nick Allegretti were out there, but at left tackle, you had Cornelius Lucas. At right tackle, Trent Scott. And then you had a different right guard in there for Sam Cosmi. I believe you had Chris Paul out there, if my memory serves me correct. The starting tight end is Zach Ertz. John Bates is number 2 tight end. Ben Sinnett, the rookie, is the 3rd tight end, which is pretty much what we predicted. Cole Turner is that 4th tight end. Again, got to see him be able to become a blocker and contributor in that fashion as well if he's going to climb this depth chart at all. Wide receiver, they listed 3 starting wide receiver slots. Terry McLaurin in one, Jahan Dotson in the other. The other wide receiver spot, not specifically listed as slot receiver, quote unquote, but you kind of give the impression that's what that is. Olamide Zaccheaus, the veteran coming over from Philly, also spent time in Atlanta. He is filling that spot. Olamide Zaccheaus, OZ as they call him, has had a very strong camp, so not really any big surprises there. Rookie Luke McCaffrey is the 2nd receiver in that, what I'm going to call the slot receiver part of the depth chart, right? Behind Olamide Zaccheaus, Jamison Crowder, and De'Ami Brown, the other second-team receivers. And if this team were to take, say, 6 receivers into the regular season, you would assume and you would look at these 3 groups and these 6 receivers as probably that group. So right on the outside looking in, Bryson Tremaine, Kazmir Allen, Mitchell Tinsley, and the rest of those guys. And Bryson Tremaine, a name that we've talked about a lot this training camp. We're going to talk about him again here on this episode. Marcus Mariota, of course, is the 2nd quarterback, backing up Jayden Daniels, followed by Jeff Driscoll and Sam Hartman. So everything kind of going chalk there for expectations. This is a little bit of a surprise here, not in the names per se, but the fact that they have 2 starting running backs listed. They've got 2 starting running back groups here for the unofficial depth chart. Brian Robinson Jr. holding down one of those spots, Austin Eckler holding down the other. And again, that's not a surprise. We all pretty much, we either call them 1 and 2 or 1A, 1B, whatever you want to call them. Both these guys are going to get a lot of work. Both these guys are going to be very important to this offense. Listed behind them is Chris Rodriguez Jr. and Jeremy McNichols. And again, that's a battle we've been talking about all training camp, where from what I'm seeing and just the way that we've seen on the practice field, Jeremy McNichols certainly is making a lot of plays, certainly seems to be probably in the lead to be that 3rd running back, while Chris Rodriguez is definitely looking at the Jets joint practice and most importantly, the game to really kind of make an impact and make his mark over there. Turning over to the defensive side of things, your defensive line, pretty much what you expected. Defensive ends, Cleveland Farrell and Dorrance Armstrong Jr. Defensive tackles, Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen. John Ridgeway and Jerzon Newton are listed as your 2nd-team defensive tackles. So Fedarian Mathis falling all the way down to the 3rd team. So again, that might be a little bit surprising to some. 7th-round draft pick Javonte Jean-Baptiste out of Notre Dame by way of Ohio State, 2nd-team defensive end. So Dan Quinn talked about before practice that you're going to see some rookies that are either at or near the top of their depth charts, really competing for these spots. And Javonte Jean-Baptiste obviously is one of those guys. KJ Henry, 2nd-year defensive end, is also on that 2nd-team group. Andre Jones Jr. filling in the 3rd group. Now, that's 4 defensive linemen. So typically, right, you go off of a base 4-3 defense. So you've got 3 linebacker spots. But here you see the 3 linebacker spots not necessarily be off-ball linebackers, but they've got 2 outside linebacker spots listed, 1 middle linebacker spot listed. So again, just a little bit of a formatting uniqueness, I suppose. Not, solely unique to just this team, but something that, a lot of times you just see linebackers listed instead of specifying. So a little bit of specificity there. Middle linebacker is obviously going to be Bobby Wagner. Your outside linebackers are Dante Fowler Jr. and Frankie Louvu. So Dante Fowler Jr. is someone that we kind of carried into this as a defensive end, quote unquote. That's why I hate the term defensive end, outside linebacker. Just call them edge rushers. But Dante Fowler, and they're in a starting slot. Jamin Davis is listed as an outside linebacker behind Dante Fowler Jr., while the Temple rookie Jordan Gee, who's been impressing, is behind Bobby Wagner, pretty much as we expected. Your cornerbacks, Mike Saberstill is your nickel. Benjamin St-Juste is one of your starting corners, and Michael Davis getting one of those starting cornerback spots on the unofficial depth chart. This is one of those things that really not a surprise, but it just kind of makes you pause because Emmanuel Forbes has basically got nothing but 1st-team reps, but he's here as a 2nd-team cornerback. And the only explanation I could possibly give for this, Emmanuel Forbes is a 1st-round draft pick. Give him as many reps as possible to prove that he is or is not capable of being a starting cornerback in this scheme. And if anything, putting him 2nd here on this opening depth chart is just going to provide more challenge, more motivation, hopefully, to Emmanuel Forbes. Look at your safeties. Strong safety, Jeremy Chin. Free safety, Quan Martin. No surprises there. Derek Forrest listed as a strong safety behind Jeremy Chin, which I said in the offseason where I would probably put him in this scheme, but it did look a little bit like they were going to use him as a free safety, although he's been injured, hasn't been able to practice as much this training camp, so we haven't gotten a lot of looks at him. Percy Butler, when there's been a third safety on the field with a first-team defense, it's been Percy Butler. So that's why we expected him to probably be listed as that second free safety. In fact, it is Jeremy Reeves, Revo, All-Pro Revo, as you guys affectionately call him, is the second-team free safety. Percy Butler is third. Dominique Hampton, third team, strong safety. Tyler Owens, kind of a Swiss Army knife safety, is listed as the fourth free safety, with Ben Nickel also being the fourth strong safety. The first kicker is Ramiz Ahmed. Second kicker is Riley Patterson. Your kick returners are Noah Igbenogany and Casimir Allen. Your punt returners are Jamison Crowder and Jahan Dotson. Of course, that doesn't mean those are the guys that are only going to play in those spots. You're going to see a lot of rotation, a lot of mixed up moves, things like that as they go through this joint practice and this first preseason game. But we kept our eye on, during practice, as we always do, on quarterback Jayden Daniels, the newly minted unofficial quarterback number 1. What we saw from him in our Eye on the Tiger Day 10 coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode of Locked On Commanders is brought to you by Game Time. And Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which means you can get your baseball tickets faster and easier with Game Time, because prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch, with killer last-minute deals that'll save you 60% or up to 60% on the app, all in prices. So there's no surprises at checkout. Views from your seat. So even if you've never been to the park, you know what to expect when you get there. And their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. The Washington Nationals have welcomed the San Francisco Giants to town for a series. And on Wednesday, you can go catch that game for as little as $5. Or you can wait until August 13th and see the Nationals and the Baltimore Orioles in action in Baltimore for $29. Or you could do both if you really want to. Take the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create your account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create your account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Our Eye on the Tiger, Day 10. Jayden Daniels' first practice as the starting quarterback of the Washington Commanders, unofficially, at least for this week. Thank you for making Locked On Commanders your first listen today. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. Get daily insight to the best fantasy draft strategies so you can win your league this season. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And on Day 10 of Washington Commanders training camp, Jayden Daniels once again got all of his reps in teams with the first team. That's now 4 days in a row. So not only is he the QB1 on the unofficial depth chart to start the preseason, he's also the QB1 in practice for 4 days running. He completed 7 of his 11 passes, which is 64%. 64%, obviously, not a great percentage, but 7 for 11, a little bit better than it sounds on paper, just looking at the percentage. First team session, only got 1 pass out. The rest of them were all run plays, a very run-heavy set there. That's kind of been a trend as well. He did complete the 1 pass. It was a rollout to the right side of the field, middle route to find running back Brian Robinson. His second set of teams through 5 passes, completed 3 of them. First pass was a left side slant completed to Olamide Zaccheaus, your number 1 slot receiver right now for the Washington Commanders. Second pass was incomplete. It was a screen pass to Austin Eckler, kind of a flick under pressure by Jayden Daniels, off target, fell to the ground. Third pass was also incomplete. That was a pass thrown away by Jayden Daniels. And of course, anytime you see a quarterback protecting the ball, you want to praise that. You want to repeat that behavior. Completed his 4th pass on an over route to Zach Ertz, coming from the right side of the coming from the left side of the formation to the right side of the formation in his route. Really good ball, really great stab, a one-handed catch by tight end Zach Ertz. So if you see someone one-hand catching on Madden with Zach Ertz and they complain, or you complain, or somebody else complains, tell them, no, Zach Ertz can make one-handed grabs on the sideline. Jayden Daniels completed his 5th and final pass of the set, a fly route pass to Bryson Tremaine, who we have talked about a lot. We're going to talk about again over Michael Davis, the starting cornerback of the Washington Commanders. Bryson Tremaine did come down very hard on the play, was shaken up for a bit. I caught up with him after the practice. He said he was all right, just kind of a momentary deal that he had to deal with, but he was back on the field later on, made another catch in the final team session for Jayden Daniels, where his first pass was incomplete, intended for Jahan Dotson on over route. Jahan Dotson was kind of the scramble play, extended play. Jahan Dotson stopped and settled in space. Jayden Daniels thought he was going to keep running, so the ball went ahead of him. A little bit of miscommunication there. Again, one of those things that these guys can work on as they get through practices. Second pass of the drive was completed. It was an RPO, quick out to Tremaine, Bryson Tremaine. So again, back on the field for his quarterback. Made the play, got the ball turned upfield for a nice run. Third pass was also completed. Quick left side pass to Brian Robinson. Fourth pass was a quick right side route to Olamide Zaccheaus. And then his final pass of that set was a pass to Zach Ertz in the middle of the field, where Jayden Daniels made a really good decision, stepped up in the pocket in the face of pressure, set himself, delivered the ball. It was a really nice play, especially for the rookie quarterback, completing four of these last 5 pass attempts in team drills on day 10. So again, 7 for 11 overall, 64%. Very solid day overall for Jayden Daniels, really just kind of stacking solid days. And again, that's why we're so looking forward to this joint practice against the New York Jets, because you do kind of have this question in your head of, okay, is he doing this well because he's really that comfortable, because he's really that solidified in this offense, or is part of it because he knows this defense, because he's practicing against them? Again, this is his 10th game or 10th day practicing against the same defense. Is this a little bit of knowing the defense better than anything else? And certainly we're going to answer those questions against the New York Jets on Thursday at joint practice, and then again on Saturday during the game. Some other notes: the offensive line, again, with some of the injuries. Trent Scott was out there. Chris Paul, I can confirm that now, was your right guard. Sorry. Tyler Biotish, Nick Allegretti, your left guard, and Cornelius Lucas, your left tackle, with Brandon Coleman, Sam Cosmi, and Andrew Wiley all missing practice, or at least missing the team's drills of practice on Tuesday. Brandon Coleman and Andrew Wiley were present for individuals. Sam Cosmi out for a second straight practice. He was also out on Sunday. Again, teams don't have to give injury reports. They don't have to give injury updates, and they're not going to, because they don't have to. So there's that. There's also a nice interception made by one of the safeties. Nickel came through with an interception, diving interception against Marcus Mariota on a pass that was tipped by cornerback Nick Whiteside. So that was a good play from the day as well. But the play of the day, we talked about him already, Bryson Tremaine making that catch. And we've seen Bryson Tremaine do this multiple times. Last time we saw him do it, we had him on the show, asked him about it. He kind of said it's just a muscle memory thing, just kind of an instinctual thing to kind of go out there, lay your body on the line to go get the ball. And Jayden Daniels certainly appreciating his wide receiver doing that. And when Bryson Tremaine was able to get back to the sideline after being shaken up, his teammates congratulated him and showed their appreciation as well. I'm having a lot of fun watching Bryson Tremaine just kind of ball out here in training camp. Also had a lot of fun catching up with Logan Paulsen. So we're going to catch up with Logan here in just a moment on this episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And we're going to do that thanks to our friends over at LinkedIn. This episode of Locked On Commanders is brought to you by LinkedIn. And when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role you're looking to fill. That's why you need to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. But LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you find professionals that you can't find anywhere else. Even those who aren't actively searching for a new job might be open to the perfect role on LinkedIn. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you are looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. So hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Wrapping up today's episode of Locked On Commanders, Logan Paulsen, team analyst for the Washington Commanders, former Washington Commanders player and NFL tight end, came through, took about 5 or so minutes out of his busy day to speak with us. So let's hear from Logan, starting off with his thoughts just kind of overall on the training camp environment and the different vibes around this team 10 days into training camp.
I think it's been really fun to watch kind of the energy at practice, the energy in the building, the excitement. You know, like we're standing out here on the field and they've picked up this old turf field, and how long has that thing been here? Yeah. So I think it's like a perfect representation of kind of the transitions that are happening, the remodels of the building, like the investment in the players, the energy at practice. It's real. And then I think the fact that you're getting a good product on the field with the players, Daniels is looking good. The rookies they brought in are kind of doing what they're supposed to do. The veterans, this kind of the backbone cultural veterans, are doing what they're supposed to do. They're leading by example. So I definitely think the excitement's real, and it's justifiably so.
And then Dan Quinn from his time in Atlanta. So I think you have a very unique opportunity. Kind of, he's talked about not copy pasting from his first time as a head coach to his second time as a coach. Is there something out here that you can kind of put your finger on to be like, that's new Dan versus familiar Dan? Because he's always been known as a team builder, right? So that's not necessarily new. But is there something you can point to and say like, that's new Dan?
I think the one thing is just how he's siloed himself. When he was in Atlanta, he's such a giving person. He wants to be involved. He wants to make everything better. But I do think you can really see he's focusing on being the head coach, right? He's letting the coordinators do their thing. Even out here in practice, he's giving his contributions, but he's not trying to make personnel decisions. Like when you hear him in his presser, it's like, oh, that's an Adam Peters conversation. It's not like he's not involved, but he's not trying to involve himself the same way. He's deferring to the people that he's hired. And that's another thing I think he's done a great job of, is just making sure those hires have been excellent. And they seem so far through the OTA, mini camp, training camp process to have been excellent. And I think that's something that is very exciting. And again, where I see a difference in departure from Dan and what he was doing in Atlanta.
And then let's talk about Jayden. What have you seen yourself from Jayden so far out here?
Yeah, I mean, Jayden, I think, has just been super impressive. Like the footwork's just been on point. I think probably the most impressive thing is the arm talent. And I heard someone make this reference today. Talent isn't necessarily like how far you throw the football, but it's the layering and the touch and the anticipation that you can throw with. And I just think every single day he'll make a throw, like the one today to Zach Ertz, which may have been a sack, but he threw that before Zach was out of his break, gave him enough air to kind of run under it. And that's big-time football processing in terms of throwing the football. So if he's showing that now, some of that stuff in terms of handling pressure gets a little bit better. We'll see how that looks in the preseason game versus the Jets. But I feel like he's just kind of checked every box along the way, in terms of what he can do at practice. And now, obviously, we get the next big test with the joint practice in the preseason game.
And let's look at it from a critical eye too, right? Because Jayden himself has even said, I've got plenty of things to learn from. Where do you want to see him grow the most during the rest of training?
Yeah, so for me, like the things I want to see is like one of the criticisms coming out of college was like, how does he handle pressure? And there is pressure. There are, they're blitzing. The rush has been pretty solid here from the Commanders. But what does that look like when it's live and real bullets? Like when they're not going to hit you, it's easy to keep your eyes down the field. Like when it's a little bit more aggressive, when the pressure's a little bit more consistent, can you still make some of these throws we've seen? I think the other thing I want to see is like that he's shown great anticipation, but that top flight, red zone, got to have it, 4th and 1, game on the line. Can we fit this ball in here? We haven't had to see that, but you don't see that in practice because the situation doesn't allow that really. So those are two things that I'm like, man, I hope I get to see more of that from him, because again, like all the other stuff looks good, completion percentage, chemistry, all that stuff looks great. It's those little details that can make or break how effective this offense will be this season.
And how big is this joint practice against the Jets in this first preseason game for Jayden?
So for me in terms of what I'm looking at, I'm sure it's huge for him. Like you'd have to ask him about that. But for me, in terms of evaluating, it's the first time you get to see him in the jersey, standing by himself with the huddle, no Cliff Kingsbury right behind him. He's got to call the play. He's got to make sure people are lined up. He's got to be composed, calm, and collected. And I think he will do that. But then, like when they do bring pressure, can I handle it? When I do see different coverages or when they try to disguise the shell a little bit, and it's the first preseason game, you're not going to see everything the Jets did last year. That's a complicated, fast-paced, aggressive defense with a cultural identity that's very, very strong. So how do you handle that? And so I think, to me, that's a huge part of the evaluation. The joint practice, like which you can go up and watch, but they're going to bring more of those kind of complicated fire zone pressures, simulated pressures. That's where you see quarterbacks in the NFL make money now on third down. So that'll be a really good, really excellent, both pieces in different ways of the evaluation of Jayden Daniels.
And then I want to tap into your tight end expertise. Zach Ertz, man. I mean, the dude's been balling. Like I've admitted on my show, I'm calling myself out. Older tight end, I wasn't expecting a lot out of him. What have you seen from Zach, and what do you think of the tight end group just in general? Yeah,
I think it's a good reminder that when you're looking at tight ends and we're looking at skill position guys, specifically older guys, like you got to look at how they get open and how they understand the nuances of route running. And I think when you watch Zach every day at practice, you just see a great understanding of coverage, how to create space, how to manipulate defenders with stems and little indicators in your route. And kudos to him. Like, he's never been a guy that wins on just pure horsepower. He's never been Vernon Davis, winning with a 4.2. He's always kind of had that 4.6, 4.7 kind of slow, subtle, very Travis Kelce-esque in terms of how he runs routes. So to see that here, see him healthy, see him look good is fantastic. And I think, the tight end room in general, I'm really excited about. John Bates I think, had a great camp, been very physical, very effective when he's been asked to catch the football. And I think Ben Sinnott, in terms of usage, is interesting because it gives you a lot of flexibility. It brings a lot of flexibility to the offense. Is he a fullback? Is he a tight end? Is he in the slot? And again, he's still got to develop as a route runner, but I think the physicality that he's played with allow this offense to be, I want to spread them out or I want to be physical. And when you look at good offenses around the league, they can do both at a high level.
And then finally, for fans that are going to be at home watching this Jets Commanders preseason game, if they want to do it with an NFL eye, with an analyst, with the scout side, how do you suggest to them that they watch this game?
Well, I think it depends on what you're looking for. Like if you want to see scheme and what Cliff's about, you're going to see early kind of day 1, 2, 3 install. And like, what is the foundation, bare bones of his defense or of his offense? What does that look like defensively? Same thing with Joe Witt Jr. They want these guys to play fast, but what is the core tenet of the defense? And I think you'll be able to see that. I think then obviously there's personnel, right? Jayden Daniels, what does he look like? Coleman, what does he look like? Luke McCaffrey, does he make any plays? All those young guys, I think this is a great opportunity to see, is the moment too big or do they look at home? And I think all those types of young guy battles, general scheme stuff, some of the free agent things like Jeremy Chin, what's his usage? Quan Martin, what's his general usage? I think are awesome, especially in the preseason.
All right, once again, that was Washington Commanders team analyst Logan Paulsen. You see him all over the place. He's doing shows with Craig Hoffman. I think he was on the John Keim report, John Keim's of ESPN's podcast recently. Got some time with him out here on the practice field to come on this show as well. So always love hearing from Logan, always dropping gems of knowledge. Our next episode will drop on Thursday after practice. This is our Wednesday episode. So it's recorded on Tuesday for Wednesday, right? But it's going to drop. I'm going to drop it as soon as I get it done, just because I don't want to keep this information from you guys any longer than I have to, which means the next episode will actually drop on Thursday, our 4th episode of the week following Jets practice. And then we've got a crossover episode with John Butchko of Locked on Jets scheduled. We'll see if we make it happen. He's in Paris for the Olympics. I'm obviously in the States, so quite the time difference. But we're going to try to get both shows together and do a crossover episode before this preseason game on Saturday. And of course, I'll be coming to you live after the game on Saturday as well. So in the meantime, if you've got questions or comments, all you got to do is text me. Join subtext.com/LockedOnCommanders. Send me your comments, send me your questions, and I'll send you my responses and bonus content, all kinds of fun stuff in kind. Thank you for making Locked On Commanders your first listen today. Now go listen to the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. Get your daily insight to the best fantasy draft strategies so you can win your league this season. As always, thank you for making Locked On Commanders your first listen of the day, every day. Thanks for coming through on a regular basis like you do. And until we speak again, if you're out and about, please be safe, be kind, and I will see you next time for another episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.